Climate change might be global, but it affects people on a local level. Say, for example, you live in Long Island. What are you going to do with the next superstorm that might affect your property and coast? Should you be asked to retreat voluntarily? Should it be mandatory? What should the state of New York do? How much of our energy should come from fossil fuels versus renewable resources? And does the thinking around climate change and what candidates say affect how you vote? That's our issue on this episode of Your Voice Matters.
How important is climate and environmental issues to you?
We were looking through old boxes in our attic a couple months ago, and we found a really old tagline from the 1960s, and it said, "The environment is our economy." So people come out to Montauk to go to the beach. They come up to Montauk to go fishing. They come out to Montauk to go in the trails.
I see climate change as an absolutely urgent existential problem that I am desperate for my grandchildren not to experience the consequences of.
I think we have to stand behind climate change, and if we don't, the future could be devastating.
Even here in Montauk and across the east end of Long Island, we are seeing unprecedented flooding events increasing in both severity and frequency. So this is a topic that we're extremely concerned about at CCOM. Our residents want to see our communities preserved.
There's a long row of resorts and motels here, and the town's coastal assessment resilience plan projects sea level rise to the point that the town of East Hampton could be a series of islands.
It is projected that we can see a sea level rise up to 2.5 feet over the next 30 years and twice that by 2100.
The recommendation is for a lot of managed retreat or relocation of downtown businesses that are particularly vulnerable to sea level rise. Do you feel like the business owners are on board with that, or is there pushback?
It's going to be up to the town ultimately to determine whether managed retreat is going to be voluntary.
A long-term projection is that a managed retreat from low-lying vulnerable areas is necessary. How's that been received?
So first of all, I always thought that the word managed retreat was a terrible way to put things. It's managed relocation, or as I like to call it, how do you keep your businesses going after the big one?
Yeah, this time of year is always scary. You know, it's hurricane season. We live in a really vulnerable place.
Obvious concern here is the storm season, how there's more and more serious storms, and every year when we get to hurricane season, we're always concerned that one of them's going to make it up here.
When this was first introduced, the idea of relocating structures in our community, that was met with a lot of fear and trepidation. Am I going to lose my business? Am I going to lose my property? Legitimate questions for people whose family and generationally has depended on these businesses and these properties, and the town as a whole has depended on tourism. But again, as we see the sea level rise, we're the canary in the coal mine.
When you say managed retreat, it sounds great, but there's certain economic realities of those hotels being on the beach. They support the wider economy in downtown Montauk, and they have a very high value on them as well. So the idea of managed retreat is something that I think needs to be fleshed out a lot more.
How much of a visceral awareness do you think the average resident has at this point?
I think the year-round resident is keenly aware.
Beach erosion is a big concern here. That's been a big kind of obvious marker of change.
The Army Corps just dropped over 450,000 cubic yards of sand, and much needed as a previous temporary effort. Geotextile bags and a smaller amount of sand has been decimated. Recently in December and January storms, Ditch Plains was decimated, another very important neighborhood in our community in Montauk, and also an economic engine in the town.
So how does climate change play into politics on the local level?
We would really urge everyone, our constituents, our community members here locally, to consider the candidate that is putting environment and renewable energy transition at the forefront of their issues. This is just critical for everyone, for future generations, to be able to have the candidate that is most going to support these critical decisions.
We're all here and we are experiencing the effects of climate change, but those experiences are neither distributed evenly, nor are they necessarily labeled or categorized as climate change, but nevertheless someone might say that you are experiencing the effects of climate change. Because unfortunately that has become something that has been politically polarized and there are battle lines drawn around it.
I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of knowledge at the moment about the fact that Black and brown communities, low-income communities suffer much worse from the pollution and the effects of climate change than do affluent communities. And we don't have, polluting industry here. So, we're unbelievably fortunate in many regards. And I think the question is a very good one. If we can't do it here, then we are going to leave it to the federal government, the state government, to do it elsewhere. But that's not a good answer. We should be able to do it here. We should be a model community. We should be able to show the rest of the world precisely what can be done.
In the past, there was a political divide, is it real or is it not real? That discussion has been asked, answered, done and dusted, settled. And I see a shift in climate crisis actually coming out of a political talking point, because more and more people on both parties agree locally here. We're in these seats locally, nationally, to make sure that we have a planet and have a sustainable life for future generations.